For instance, on the leasing issue, we've had a few landlord-tenant questions, and we've had a few other users kind of weigh in on their experiences. It's a great benefit for everybody. So go to weekendappointment.com. And, of course, don't forget you can get your free will there, too. 540-0580. That's a talk line number this afternoon. And it's official. I guess my ratings are now better than Penn State. That's why you're not hearing Penn State on WHP this afternoon, I swear. Nonetheless, 540-0580. And, again, you want to talk about family law, criminal law, whatever you want to talk about. I've been getting a lot of landlord-tenant questions. And in the landlord-tenant arena, there are a lot of issues that come up. And I just had a friend of mine call me the other day on the phone, and he says, Carl, I have and this is one where I said to him, the law doesn't always address these things perfectly. We have some concepts that we can apply. But here's what he says. He says, Carl, I've got this apartment, and I had two gals renting it, and they both moved out, and they have time left on their lease, and I can't find them. Well, then I located the one, and she found a new tenant who's willing to take over the whole lease. But the second one is nowhere to be found, and they don't get along anymore or don't know each other anymore, sort of thing. So I don't know where to get hold of this other person. What can I do? I mean, they kind of clearly moved out, but they still have time left on the lease. Do I have to go through an eviction to evict them? And I said to him, use your gut. If all their stuff's cleared out, they're nowhere to be found, not even their old friend knows where to find them, and you replace them as a tenant, probably you're going to be okay. But, it's the minute you do something like that, they show up and say, I thought I could live here. I know I haven't paid rent in 90 days, and I know, but you never evicted me. And I told him it's a possibility, but I said, use your gut. And so in the landlord-tenant arena, you don't want to just use your gut. You need to know what the law is. But sure enough, there will be circumstances that come up where it's questionable. Did he abandon this property? So the other one that we see a lot of, and I'll remind you the talk line number, by the way, is 540-0580. You can get on here and I'll answer your legal questions. But back to this landlord-tenant thing. If oh gosh, Matt, you're making me laugh. If you go and have somebody move out and they leave stuff behind, are they out? Do they need to be evicted? These issues come up in landlord-tenant law all the time, and you need to know what the person's rights are. So if you don't evict them and you just think they moved out and you move somebody else in, you might be in for a lawsuit. So I always encourage people, run whatever your landlord-tenant scenario is by an attorney. I know there's some guy out there who's chortling going, I've been a landlord for 10 years, and I go to court and do everything myself and never need an attorney. Well, that's fine. And for some people, if that's all you did, if you're a professional landlord, maybe you wouldn't need an attorney. Although, actually, the bigger landlords, the folks who do have 10, 20, or 100 or more units, use attorneys all the time. But it's up to you. But I just want to make sure everybody's aware. Sometimes it's a little sticky on the landlord-tenant stuff, and the questions just seem to keep coming up. Bud, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Are you there, Bud?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today, Carl?
Good. What's going on?
Carl, I lost a case. I fell at a house trailer, and I lost it on the case, they said, because it was an absentee landlord. Did you ever hear of such a thing?
Who'd you sue?
I sued the landowner and the son they had living on the property.
Okay. And was that a civil suit in a regular county court?
Yes.
And you got thrown out because of an absentee landlord?
Yes. Did you ever hear of such a thing?
I never heard of such a thing. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what an absentee landlord is, but I never heard of. If it's premise liability, the owner of the property or the leasee of the property is going to be responsible. Now, that is a little bit of a trick, though, and I'll give you an example. If you come and rent a place from me, and let's suppose I have two rentals and a common sidewalk to both, and the landlord takes care of the sidewalk. If something happens to you on the sidewalk, you slip and fall, you can sue the landlord. But if the landlord puts in the lease that the tenant's responsible for cleaning the sidewalk, then the person you would need to sue is the tenant, and you might not be able to reach the landlord because shoveling the sidewalk is a duty, but it's a delegable duty. And if I delegate it to you, then you're responsible for it. So then you have to sue the tenant, not the landlord. So maybe that's what you're referring to. Does it turn out that there was just no insurance for the tenant?
Insurance, no.
No insurance.
Not by they had their people that owned the property. It was their son. There was no canceled checks.
Right, but they were arguing that their son was the tenant and that he was responsible for the premise at the time because they had delegated those duties. But what you're saying is it was a sham.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, but I think we figured out what they meant then and what happened to you. And that's a problem. That's another reason why I'm sure you got hurt, and that's why you needed to do a lawsuit. I hope you had disability insurance or some other way to recompense yourself for at least lost wages. So,
well, that would have crippled me up. That's
yeah.
the problem.
Yeah. All right.
It's one of them things. Thanks very much.
All right, bud. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Bye-bye.
Folks, by the way, if you don't have a personal disability insurance, and I'm not talking about workers' compensation insurance that your employer carries, and I'm not talking about life insurance that'll give you some benefit if you lose 3 legs. I'm talking about just a simple, straightforward disability, no questions asked policy, and there's some hybrids of that come with life insurance. Everybody should have one. One of the things that drives me crazy, I have a lot of clients come to see me, and they're starving to death because they can't work because of the injury. But the other side doesn't have to pay you right away. So if you don't have your own insurance to either fill in your wages or pay your medical bills, and you have a lawsuit on your hands, you can't speed things along. Sometimes take 6 months to a year or 3 years before you're going to see any money. And in the meantime, if you had your own personal disability insurance policy or your own personal wage replacement, expense replacement type policy, you'd be in much better shape. You see the ads for this Aflac. That's something that's kind of along those lines. I'm talking about a good quality disability insurance policy. Some employers offer them, some don't, but you can get them individually. So if you don't have one, strongly consider it. Bob, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Bob, are you there?
Hey, Bob. Hey, Carl. This is Bob. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, I got a situation that's been eating at me, this monkey on my shoulder for almost 15 years. I moved to Pennsylvania, and no sooner got here, the company that transferred me here closed, and did some 1099 work and got myself in the rears. I've straightened out the federal taxes. I'm on a payment plan with them.
Uh-huh.
I haven't addressed the state for nearly 15 years, even though I pay taxes now.
Okay.
I was hoping the Mr. Rendell would come out with an amnesty that was kicking around a couple months ago, but I heard that's went down the toilet. Just to think quite sure what to do at this point, because I like I said, I need to get this monkey off my back.
Yeah, my recommendation when people have run something like yours by me is twofold. One is talk to a CPA or tax preparer. They can tell you what you need to do to prepare the old returns. Once you've prepared and filed the old returns, if you haven't already done those, then you'll know what your tax and penalty liabilities are, and then you go see a tax attorney or a bankruptcy attorney or both to help you figure out what you need to do and have them negotiate either some kind of payment plan for you or work out a strategy to possibly use a bankruptcy vehicle to perhaps get rid of some taxes. That's not usually recommended, but it can be used sometimes. But I would use a CPA first to figure out what your liabilities are, unless you don't know what they. But if you already know what they are exactly, then I would see a tax attorney. That's not something I do, but it is something that you can find.
Yeah, like I say, it's been a monkey on my back for almost 15 years, even though I've had taxes taken out of my paycheck.
Right.
I just,
Right. And if you have any assets, bankruptcy is going to require you to exhaust all those assets before you have any ability to affect the tax liabilities that are outstanding. Hey, I got to go into break here, Bob.
All right.
Thanks. Good luck with that. Contact the tax attorney. Folks, weekend appointment. My name's Carl Rominger. When we come back, I'll continue to answer your legal questions. 540-0580.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Hey, I'm back. 540-0580. That's the talk line number. Legal question. You want to talk about just about anything to do with the law? We don't do the overnight coast to coast, no UFOs. And, it's an honor to be on the radio, I have to say. But I tuned in last evening or early this morning when I was getting ready to go goose hunting, and some guy was on talking about some kind of conspiracy of aliens, and I got a good chuckle out of that. Ryan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Hey, Ryan.
Hello. Hi, it's Brian.
It's Brian. Got it. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I can't read.
Quick landlord-tenant question for you. Is a landlord allowed to put in a lease an automatic price increase for the next year?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is in a residential lease, I think it would have to have some reasonableness to it or an ability to opt out before it gets triggered.
Okay. And does he have to justify any cost increase on his end?
No, I don't think he has to. And the answer is most commercial leases have built-in increases. Residential leases, you usually don't see built-in increases for two reasons. One is they're usually done on a year-to-year basis, and so people want the ability to sort of renew the lease or give intent not to renew the lease. But if you want to do a lease that has this automatic renewal clause in it year to year, a lot of times then you might want to put in a small bump. But you as the tenant at the time you signed it must have been aware of it, right? Or the landlord must have been aware. So that's the argument. So you're going to be, as long as it's reasonable, 5% per year. I don't know. I don't know what's reasonable.
Okay.
But
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
That's the thing. In commercial leases, I remember this because, I scratched my head. Hi, my name's Bob. I'm going to open my own business. I'm going to sell widgets. And I'm going to sign this lease to sell widgets at this little strip mall. And I signed this document that's 1.5 inches thick that they sent me, and it's for my corporation, Widgets Inc., but I had to sign it with a personal guarantee. And, Carl, guess what? I'm not being able to sell many widgets, so I want to get out of this lease. And isn't this lease kind of burdensome and unconscionable, and I could get out of it, right? And you look at them and say, yeah, maybe if you were a tenant in a landlord-tenant residential property, you would have some arguments. But when you're a sophisticated business person entering into a business-to-business lease, so a lease for business purposes, you're not going to be able to act like you're an unsophisticated entity, and you're going to be held to those draconian terms. So keep that in the back of your head, folks. The big differences between commercial leases and residential leases, and the most important of which is residential lease, you can sign what's called a hell or high water lease. You can sign a lease that has just absolutely horrible terms in it and things that would be unconscionable or unenforceable. But it's your 14th Amendment right to contract that trumps there. Now, in residential leases, if you've been a landlord and you're a landlord out there, you'll realize that tenants can weasel out of a lot of things under this, legal flexibilities that they're given in the interpretations. Sammy, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580.
Well, thank you for taking my call, Mr. Rominger. This is Sammy.
Hey, Sammy, what's going on?
We talked last week about having a people's court here in Cumberland County.
You were giving me your plan. I was hoping you were going to post it online.
The plan is, I'm going to mention the plan or give you the plan right now in about 5 minutes. It's going to be very simple. You want to invest in this? You and your friends want to invest in this?
Sammy, I'm investing $1 billion of airtime in you right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, Mr. Rominger, anyway, I think we need. Have you seen People's Court?
You mean the one with Judge Wapner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it once or twice. I think they moved on to Judge Judy now. If you've turned on the TV recently,
they had a number of them in there. I got a whole list of them here. Yeah, Judge Judy, I guess, is the main one now.
Highest paid star in TV, my friend.
Is she really?
Oh, no kidding.
I think she needs a charisma course. But anyway, that's another subject. Are you there?
I am always here, Sammy.
Well, okay. Sometimes they hang up on me.
Well, I have to. Sometimes they put me into breaks. It's the producer's fault. All right, Sammy, shoot this question out fast before my listeners fall asleep.
We have it like in Cumberland County here where we resolve these disputes. As an example, you mentioned the landlord-tenant situation. We also have the situation where parents have a lot of disputes on joint custody, and this would be on television. We could probably put it on. The fastest way is probably get an internet site and do it through the internet.
Now, Sammy, why is nobody else doing this?
I don't know. It's a heck of. Listen. I have thousands of good ideas that I don't understand why people aren't doing them. The thing is, I can't get any. The problem with all these good ideas is you can't get any protection. You lawyers don't make it easy for us to get for these great ideas and getting any. Now, like this idea, could I copyright that idea? Cumberland People's Court. Huh?
Well, you certainly might be able to get the trademark to the name, and you might be able to put together. But I doubt you're going to find that the idea of putting court drama on TV or court disputes on TV is unique.
Well, no, it's not unique, but it's needed. Okay, there's a basic need out here for that.
And how many counties do you propose to put online, Sammy?
Well, I want to put this is going to be worldwide. Every county in the world.
All right. Sammy, this is what I need you to do. I want you to put your business plan on weekendappointment.com so we can all look at it.
And then
I can't go through the whole business plan on the air, my friend.
Huh?
I can't go through the whole business plan on the air. I need you to put it. You want? You're serious?
Make a 1 or 2 page business plan.
Yeah, let us know. We want to hear about it.
Well, you've heard about much of it. It's very. I'm copying basically the People's Court here with
I don't say that. You don't want to get sued, Sammy. Hey.
No, I don't want to get sued. That's why I have you here as my lawyer.
I got to take a couple more. Calls here, Sammy. I'm going to let you. I need you to get this plan up on the air here, up on weekendappointment.com. All right, thanks, Sammy. Folks, that is why I am kicking Penn State's butt. Sammy's ideas and my commentary of what have knocked Penn State right off of WHP 580. And if you believe that, I'm going to sell you some swampland in Florida, too. All right, back to all seriousness. We were talking about landlord-tenant issues. I want to turn to family law. Ran into this problem just this last week. Somebody waits and child moves out of county. And in fact, they're separated. And mom's out of county, and they're kind of getting along, and they're kind of exchanging the kid, but they're really not. And he's living in the other end of the state, and she's living down this way. And all of a sudden, bam, the 6-month mark gets hit, and she's in the courthouse. And she's got the paperwork filed, and now she's got the home county advantage. And the reason is because whatever county that child's lived in for the last 6 months is presumptively going to be the county that has jurisdiction. Whatever state that kid's lived in for the last 6 months is presumptively going to be the state that has jurisdiction over that child, and most likely the court's going to find that. So if you're in a split custody situation and people have moved out and you're getting along fine and everything's good, it might still be in your best interest to reduce it to writing if you want to figure out what county it's going to be in. And it probably doesn't matter. So if you're in York County and your spouse moves to Dauphin County with the child and the two you're going to fight, it doesn't really matter if it's in Dauphin or York County. Probably not. But your spouse moves to Altoona and you're in Lancaster and they take the kids up there with them for the summer, and then you thought they were going to come back for the school year, and then it's been a couple months, and then you say, well, you could try school up there, and the next thing you know, there's a custody order out of Altoona, and you're trying to find a lawyer in Altoona, and you're not from Altoona, and you have to drive 3.5 hours every time you want to have a custody hearing. So please, if you're in a split custody situation, you don't have an order of court, and it's recent, think long and hard about whether or not you need to vest one of the local courts, your home court, with jurisdiction. The advantage of your home court isn't that judges are friendlier to people from their county. It's that it's easier to get access to justice in your home county because of two things. Number one, the lawyer you want is usually in the area where you want them, meaning they're more familiar with the local rules. They practice in those local courthouses, so they know some of the local quirks. So while certainly you can take a lawyer from anywhere in the state and drop them anywhere else in the state and they should be fine, there is some theory that for most practitioners, a little bit of local flavor helps them better deal with your case. So usually you're going to want to hire a local attorney, and to boot, you're going to have to travel to meet with that attorney if you want to do face-to-face, and if you want that attorney to talk to grandma and all the other witnesses you want to drag into your custody case, the farther away they are, the harder it is to make all that work. So make sure, again, if you're in a split custody situation to divide custody, that you get a court order and try to keep it in the county near you, or agree with the other side before they move too far away. Now, if they've moved away and you're still in the local area, you got 6 months because it's where that child was for the last 6 months, that control. And once they've been in a new county or a new state for 6 months, that's probably where all the legal action is going to take place thereafter. I got to go to break again, but it's 540-0580, 540-0580, Carl Rominger, Weekend Appointment.
Now back to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580. Call toll-free 1-800-724-5801.
Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. That's 540-0580. If you have a legal question, just want to talk about a legal issue, want to sound off about the Supreme Court. By the way, and I don't know if anybody picked up on this or not, but I guess it's my hobby or my job or something. The Supreme Court of the United States had some oral arguments the other day, and Sotomayor was commenting along the lines of, it was a First Amendment case and had to do with corporate speech. And she made a comment along the lines of, well, do corporations really have free speech because they are creatures of the state and we create them? Do they really have constitutional rights? And for those of you who haven't thought about this before, I want you to think about something. Currently, corporations have constitutional rights, but it hasn't always been that way. In fact, before the Supreme Court of the United States said yes, they do, it wasn't clear that they did. And in fact, corporations were strongly limited originally to only do what their charter was. After the Industrial Revolution and through modern American history, we've given the corporate person, this imaginary person, imaginary creature, a lot of rights, including the right of free speech, including political speech, etc. It's a double-bladed sword. At one level, giving corporations no free speech rights makes them completely subject to the whim of the government. On the other hand, giving them free speech rights and right of contract and other rights makes them just like living people, but they live forever, theoretically, which is the difference between a corporation and a person. And there's a benefit to society in having a strong corporate entity, because think of a drug company that can exist for 100 years and do nothing but make pharmaceuticals and put money into research and work on long-term goals that outlast the career or lifespan of one person. So if you think about, like a famous inventor who invented things, the modern drug is usually developed through the action of thousands of people over dozens of years. And although technology is compressing some of those time frames, you really need corporate entities and institutional entities to make that work. And only if they're strong can they do the things they need to do. The flip side is should corporations really be choosing who the politicians are when they really have no vote, but they have lots of money to go around? So it was interesting, though, because amongst the lawyers, the question is, was she questioning the idea that the First Amendment should be extended to corporations? I don't think so. I think she was questioning whether or not corporations should have any of the amendments extended to them. And I don't know if that's going to come into play, but it's the first glimpse we've seen of what she might or might not say. And it's certainly different than what the current court has held. And I don't think she has enough votes if that were her belief. But nobody knows if that was a hint or just a question to sort of prod the lawyers along and make them explain things a little better. So that's your Supreme Court report for the day. I did get a post on weekendappointment.com. Again, the talk line number is 540-0580. And remember, you've overwhelmingly voted to take Penn State off the air here. So 540-0580. If you're watching the Penn State game and listening to me at the same time, shame on you. Turn the game off. Okay. Got this on Weekend Appointment. If a tenant signs a lease and then leaves early, can the landlord legally enforce a clause that says a tenant must pay a certain amount of money, in this case $1,500 for breaking the lease? I thought the law generally does not allow this practice and that at the worst, a tenant would forfeit the security deposit. Well, the answer is if you break a lease, you're responsible for the remainder of the rents of the lease. So if you're 10 months into a lease and it's $750 a month, $1,500 would be the last 2 months. If you're 5 months into a 12-month lease and then you're going to owe like $5,000. Now, the landlord has a duty to what we call cover, meaning that it's the landlord's job to try and get money from someone else. So a landlord can't sit on their hands and say, I'm going to sue you. They have to sue you and in the meantime try to re-rent the apartment. And if they do re-rent it, then they're only owed the money they lost, which would probably be the rents that didn't get paid while you were not paying until the new tenant took over, plus any other ancillary damages that might exist. So is a clause like that legal? The answer is usually yes, if it's modest or reasonable, again, I like to use that word, vis-a-vis the lease, as a form of liquidated damages. Now, if you're paying $500 a month and it says that if you break the lease early, you owe $10,000, well, that's probably more than the value of the whole lease. So that would probably be unreasonable. If it's some smaller amount, and in contracts, we do something called liquidated damages. If I don't perform, I owe you $1,000. If you don't perform, you owe me $1,000. We do that so that we don't have to fight later over what's owed or not owed. We both agree ahead of time that if either one of us offends the other in the contract and doesn't do what we're supposed to do, we're going to be responsible for $1,000. It makes breaking the contract a known and fixed cost for both sides. So the answer to that question is I think that they are enforceable, a default liquidated damage clause in a residential lease. But what do I know? All right, 540-0580. Let's see who we got here. Joe, you're on WHP 580.
Hi, this is Joe calling.
Yeah, Joe, what's going on?
Listen, if you're married and you're having problems in your marriage with your wife and you decide to leave the house for a little bit, like a couple weeks or
right.
2 weeks or something like that.
It's not abandonment, Joe.
Pardon?
It's not abandonment.
Okay. Yeah, right, not abandonment. But what about when you come back, if your wife has destroyed, like, your personal property or throwing your clothes away or things like
right.
that? I mean, do you have any recourse there, or are you just stuck with the fact that you lost your stuff now?
Well, the short answer is you do have a couple recourses. I mean, potentially it's a criminal action. There's a court case out there that says that where there was a case where a husband destroyed the family stereo, the husband and wife stereo, that was a form of theft because he took it and deprived her of her property right, even though it was his as well. So short answer is it might be vandalism, it might be a form of harassment, it could be a form of theft. But most policing forces will simply say, get a lawyer, it's a civil matter.
Exactly. I mean, that's what happened to me last time. When I did come home after being away for a couple of days, I had a lot of my personal things taken out of my closet and things like that. And I did call the police, and they came out, and they just said that everything in that house is marital property, and she has just as much right to do whatever she wants with it as I do.
Yeah, and I think that's not 100% correct, but it's probably 82% correct, and therefore, but the bigger reason is, and I understand this, if you were a police officer or if you've ever hung out with any of them, you'll know that they spend endless amounts of time responding to domestic squabbles, sometimes fights where somebody needs to be arrested, but a lot of times just two people yelling at each other or doing immature things like dumping underwear drawers out windows and things like that, to the neighbor's dismay. And so they take the idea of, you know what, if nobody's beating on anybody, then go see lawyers and get this sorted out. And Joe, I'm not a life coach here, but buddy, if you keep moving out and she keeps destroying your property, it might be time to really consider, the big D.
Right. Yeah, I know. I didn't want to, but
well, listen. People are going to yell at me for saying this, but get divorced. And the answer is, if you're in a miserable existence, you can continue in your miserable. It's three choices. You can continue along in your miserable existence, and that's okay. That's what you want to do. Number two is the two of you can get serious about trying to salvage your relationship and go see what they call marriage counselor, a professional, not some cockamamie, youth group leader type marriage counselor. I mean, a real honest to gosh marriage counselor who has credentials, and let them help you guys work back together or pronounce you ununifiable so that they will help you determine whether or not you guys really want to stay married and if that's the issue or not. And if you do want to stay married, they'll work you back into it, or they won't. So you can either just do nothing and the problem won't go away. It's like a splinter in your hand. It's not going to go away. On the other hand, you see the counselor, they're going to help you guys figure out what you need to do to make it work. And sometimes there's individual therapy that's needed on both sides or one side. And then they work the two of you back together, and then you live happily ever after. Or the marriage counselor says, you know what? You guys can try to stay married, but you're completely incompatible, and here's why, and here's what's going to happen, and why you're always going to be miserable. make a choice. At least you have a knowing, you know now who and what needs to do what, or if it's just impossible. And some people will say, well, these marriage counselors can't tell you that. But, the answer is, if it's not a fun place to be, and if you have to keep taking breaks from each other and people are destroying property, that's really not a good relationship, because I think a lot of listeners would call in and tell you that they live in very happy, healthy relationships. Half of them would be lying, but some of them would be telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there are good relationships out there, and you guys either need to learn how to make yours one, or you need to get undone. And so I just want to be sure when I say get divorced, I'm not counseling you that that's the only option. But I do think you need to look seriously, at that. I always say to people, if you're living in one bedroom and your wife's living in another bedroom and you're fighting all the time and you've been doing that for 2 years, it might be time for a reality check on whether you're really in a marriage or not. So
thank you very much, Carl. You've been a great help, and your show's wonderful.
Thanks.
I love listening to you.
Thanks, Joe. And I don't want to beat up on you. I just want you to do something affirmative to work this thing out either way.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Joe. God bless.
Bye-bye, Carl.
540-0580. I'll see you after the break.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Hey, welcome back. Talk line number is 540-0580. This is Carl Rominger. This is Weekend Appointment, the show where I answer your legal questions. Now, for those of you who don't know me, and Ralph, I got you on the phone here, and I'm about to put you on the air, so hold tight for just a second. I got to do my infomercial here. For those of you who don't know me, I practice throughout the mid-state. I'm better known sometimes for some criminal trials I've had over the years, but we practice in family law. We do bankruptcy, do a lot of personal injury work, a lot of family law, a lot of custody, represent some restaurants, do a little liquor license work once in a while, those sorts of things. And we have 4 attorneys in the firm to serve you, as well as a full staff of paralegals and secretaries and a law clerk or 2. So, and we also have an interpreter. So if you know somebody who's a Spanish speaker who needs some legal help, we have an on-staff interpreter who can help them. So if you know anybody who speaks Spanish or needs legal services here in America and doesn't speak the English language but speaks the Spanish language, we have an on-staff interpreter who usually stays in the Chambersburg office. But anyhow, you can reach us. You go to weekendappointment.com. You can find my phone number on there, how to contact me. And let me clarify one other thing while I'm talking about Weekend Appointment. I got a post from a fellow that says, I keep following your instructions to download a free will and can't find it. Well, I don't know what happens here, but folks, it's real simple. If you're a registered user, which he is, you go to the front of the website, and you're going to see this area, and it's called Registered Users Area. And it's called Registered Users Area Private Forum, and you have to be a signed-in registered user. And when you do that, you click on it, and you'll see the free will thing right up top. You click on that, and it'll give you a link to download. You download it. It's a PDF. If you don't know what a website is and you don't know what a PDF is, that's why you're listening to AM radio. But the answer is, that's how you're going to get the free will form. Then you fill it out, you send it in, and you get a honest-to-gosh free will. You get to meet with me, and we go over it together. Ralph, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Hey, Ralph.
Yeah, hi, Carl. How are you?
Good.
Listen, I had a house built about 5 years ago, and on the side of the house there's some, white metal flashing. And I just recently discovered that there's a hole in the side of my foundation, and it was covered up by this flashing. And the builder originally told me that the flashing was put there just to keep water away from the side of the house.
Right.
Now this builder has since gone out of business, but I do know the president, and I know where his whereabouts is. Do I have any recourse against him?
Well, okay, now you're giving me these are one of these questions where I have to kind of go through a couple different questions first. So let's assume for a minute, let's work backwards on your scenario.
Okay.
You know who the president is.
Right.
If it was a corporation that's gone defunct,
right,
your lawsuit may be against a defunct corporation, and therefore you might not be able to reach the owners of the shareholders or former principals of the corporation if, in fact, the corporate structure was done properly. So assuming that you could get to the president because it was a sham corporation and they never did all the things that a corporation's supposed to do, or he somehow personally guaranteed something along the way. The next question would be, what's your statute of limitations? When was the building built?
2003.
Okay. You might be past the statute of limitations, except that we might argue what's called a discovery rule, which is you didn't know that you'd been wronged or you didn't know what had happened
Right.
Until you discovered this, or reasonably should have discovered this. Now that you have, we could say that the statute of limitations starts running. Then the next question is, what's the statute of repose? And that's the time frame in which you got to discover a problem. And I think, I'm trying to remember what the statute of repose. I have that on weekendappointment.com because somebody else asked us this question before. And we looked up some statutes of repose and put them up on there. So off the top of my head, I think it's a longer term, like maybe 15 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling that you're going to be okay on the statute of repose issue. The idea of a statute of repose is just that you don't have to worry about work you did 30 years ago creeping back up and causing you problems, even if you did it incompetently. And the trade-off there is it protects you as a business person or a contractor with some certainty from being sued from way back when. And at the same time, the policy is, well, if there really was a problem, probably it would have been discovered within X number of years. So every once in a while there's an injustice worked by that, but overall it's good for society. But anyhow, back to you. You're inside that statute of repose most likely, so yes, you could sue them. But so you got two problems. One is a hole in your foundation, and did you discover it? Yes. So you're inside the statute of limitations should be yes. So you can probably sue them, but who do you sue? And if it's a defunct entity, there may be nobody to go after. Mm-hmm. So, and worse, because I always caveat it this way, let's assume you could get to the president because they had a screwy corporate structure. The president may be what we call married, and if he or she is married, I guess they will then have the protection of tenants in the entirety, meaning that all the marital property, which is anything titled to the marriage, and anything jointly owned that's untitled property, so basically all the contents of their house is marital property, and you couldn't reach it even if you did get a judgment.
Mm-hmm. So I could still go ahead and initiate a small claims action, and then let the courts decide. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
I am. And then the next question will be, what defenses will he throw up, or would he be willing to pay it? And also, is there any maybe they can point you to an insurance policy that was in place at the time, but I doubt that would be in full force effect because it's probably claims made insurance. So
okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Ralph. And folks, you can see how the analysis goes. People come in my office, I always want to sue somebody, and we have to go through all these little questions like what year did it happen? How long have you known about it? Okay, we have a statute of limitations problem. No. Do we have a collections problem? That kills 95% of all lawsuits, the inability to get paid. And people always tell me, my favorite, I'll be in the office, and you'll be sitting across from me, and we'll be talking about your lawsuit, and I'll start to explain how there's really no money in it. And you'll say to me, Carl, I don't care about the money. This is for principle. Okay. And then I say, well, that's good. I'd like to do it on an hourly fee then because it's for principle and it's not about getting money. And they look at me and kind of, they say, well, why don't you do it for a third? And I'm like, well, we've just discussed that you're likely to collect maybe $5,000 if you're lucky, and it's going to take 100 hours to do. So a third of 5,000 is like $1,600. Divide by 100. $16 an hour, and that is more, it costs a lot of money to operate a law office. And I'm like, wait, back up. Do it hourly, I'll pay if it's really about principle. And then they go, well, yeah, I could use some money. But my point is you really have to be careful when you're trying to bring a claim to make sure that you have a claim and that you have a collectible claim, because the next question is, why can I not collect my money? Well, A, the guy can go bankrupt. He's what we call judgment proof. Or B, he or she is married, and because of the nature of the marriage and the way property is titled, you can't reach any property of the marriage. So with that in mind, just be careful. And if you got a contractor coming over and he's going to do a $10,000 job for you, not only should you make sure that he has one of those nifty new attorney general numbers, which I'm not sure how that's going to help you, but make sure he has that or she has it. And then if they have a spouse, have their spouse sign the contract. That way, if you get a breach of the contract in a lawsuit, the spouse is part of it, and you can reach both of them. You can get around the shield. And if they look at you and they say, oh, I'd never have my spouse sign, they're lying. And I know they're lying because if they're a legitimate business person and they're borrowing money from a bank or they're leasing equipment to work with or doing anything that requires them to sign for credit, darn tootin' the bank and the leasing company and the equipment company and everybody gets both spouses' signatures because they're aware of this collection problem. So why wouldn't you, if you're legitimate, guarantee the customer the same protections that you give your creditors by signing both? So keep that in the back of your head. That's my tip of the week. And I will see you next Saturday. Now, in the meantime, go to weekendappointment.com. Post your questions all week long. You get my phone number there from my office. I'd love to see you in the office, folks. Always happy to take your case. And we practice all around the mid-state. And I just want to give a shout-out again to Laurel Run Outfitters Goose Hunting. You can find them on the website. Make sure you swing by and give Brian a phone call. See you next week.